do to help God accomplish his plan?
It's follow his commandments, his requirements.
No. The children of Israel, they became a nation. And what came out of that nation? Remember I did this last week? The family tree? Lineage. He's going to send his Redeemer from the lineage of the nation of Israel. So Jesus comes later. And what was the second thing they were going to do? It was part of the promise to Abraham. That would be the lineage. Yeah, kind of the blessing all nations would be Jesus coming from the lineage. But it was a little bit more of a practical matter.
Well, wouldn't he be reclaiming the land?
Close, that's close. It's a little bit more specific than just reclaiming the land. Was there anybody on this land that they were going to claim? Yeah, people were there. So their second job was to destroy these nations as part of God's punishment to them. Remember, there's I think it was Deuteronomy 9 says, you know, when you take this land, don't think it's because of your high and mighty service to me. No, it's because I promised your fathers that I was going to destroy these people. And in essence, the nation of Israel is God's tool to destroy these people. Now, so you go through the book of Judges, and it ended, in those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. Then we talked about Saul became king. And then David was a threat in Saul's view. So Saul tried to kill David. So David was running. And then he kind of started a new business. Remember what his business was? Protection. Yes, I refer to it as community service. So he protected, I guess, lots of people and made the roads safe for these people to travel. But one guy in particular, Nabal, was a rich man, but he was not a crude man. He was boor is a word they used. So anyway, he protects the servants and the shepherds that handle his flocks. It is shearing time, and traditionally they have a big party. So David sent his messengers to ask if they could have some of the bounty of the party. And Nabal's answer was, who is this David? Oh, David says, I'm going to send you and bring this up in my name. Who is this David? Who is the son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? And so we ask the question, does Nabal really know who David is? Is he familiar that he killed Goliath? Is he aware that he fought the Philistines? Does he know who his father is? And the answer is probably so. There's nothing that says for sure, but so David's men, so basically he sends the men away. Get out of here. So the men go back to David, they recount the story, and what was David's reaction? Strap on your swords. We're going to show them who David is. So they take off. They're going to slaughter everyone, and David makes the oath. Let's see, where'd they go? May God deal with David ever so severely if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to Nabal. Does that sound serious? Was David committed to that cause? Yeah, he was ready to take action. So one of the servants of Nabal went to Nabal. He went to his wife. Basically, your husband won't listen to us. Maybe you will. Recounted the story, said, think it over. And she snapped and said, this is what we're going to do. I want you to gather all this stuff as an offering. and we're going to send it to David and his men. And she went out and met him. And we talked about Abigail was a woman of means, and why would she go out to deliver this message? You know, she could have sent one of her servants out to do it, but she sent the servants ahead to deliver the food, but she made it a point to show up herself. And on behalf of herself and her husband, she apologized, made this offer to David. And so David accepted her offer. But what else did she do in relation to David's future? Okay, not that much future. So you're not wrong, yeah. You remember this was the Have It Your Way at Burger King? She said that you're going to be king. So she was a prophetess. All right, so anyway, the story goes, David stopped. He didn't kill Nabal and his men. He thanked her for stopping him. So 10 days later, Nabal's dead. David sends his men to propose to her. So that's kind of, I guess the way kings do things. They send their lieutenants, here, go handle this for me. She accepts, they get married, have a son. Now, how much more is she mentioned after this? Not much. So the son is never in contention for the throne. And even though she was a prophetess, she was wise, she was diplomatic, we don't hear much more about her. However, she was at least named as one of David's wives. Any comment on that? We'll move on. All right, so it's Memorial Day. So today we're going to talk about Deborah, who was a judge and a warrior, one of God's select, and Jael, who was a warrior. Now, we talked about David, but we have to go back in time to the judges. So Israel takes the promised land, and while they're there, they had some issues with the locals, and so the locals would subjugate them from time to time, and then under their oppression, Israel would call out to God, save us. God would send a judge, and the judge would restore the people to God and also deliver them by fighting whoever was tormenting them. So Deborah becomes one of those judges. Now, so the Canaanites are the one who are harassing them at this point. Why were the Canaanites a problem, and should they have been? Frank, you've answered this before in another class. Same answer, a little bit different question. So why were the Canaanites a problem? I'll say two things. The first, when they took the promised land, God told them to destroy everybody. Did they destroy all the Canaanites? No, they left some around. Okay, now what was the second reason? So God was punishing Israel using the Canaanites. Now, we're going to talk about Jabin, king of Canaan, and Sisera, his army commander. We talk about Deborah and the Israelite commander. So we're in Judges 4, first verse. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim. We'll just call that double H. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to the Lord for help. All right, first off, who is Ehud? He was a judge as well, the first judge. What did he do? Oh, yeah. He was from the group that were left-handed. All right. Yes. So he became an assassin, and he killed the evil king of Moab, who turned out was really fat. I guess he was living well off his prosperity. And so he had the dagger strapped to his leg. He pulled it out, and they made note of the left-handed people, and he stabbed them. So he killed the king. So after he killed the king, rallied up his army, and they killed about 10,000 Moabites. And as a result, they enjoyed 80 years of rest. All right, but sadly, after he died, the children of Israel began to drift away and take up the habits of the locals. So in time, God sold them over to the Canaanites, and they were harshly oppressed. So Israel cries out. God appoints Deborah as judge and sends her. So for 20 years, she kind of ruled before this story takes place. Now, what was uncommon about her being a judge? She was a woman. Did they have any woman judges before this point? Did they have any woman judges after this point? So she's kind of unique. Now, of course, in the Jewish culture, women, I think for the most part, were not part of the government. Not part of the temple, but we do have some priestesses and prophetesses, and Deborah was also a prophetess. Now, let's see. Let's go to verse 6. Oh, wait, before that. Deborah was thought to be a Nephramite because she was from Ephraim. So, summary, she led them for 60 years, 20 before and then 40 afterwards. Now, they were called mishpat, which translate as judges. Now, can you remember an earlier story where there was one judge and it was suggested that he appoint additional judges? Yeah, that's the time frame. Who was it? Stuck his hand in and came out leprous, stuck it back in and came out clean. Had that stick. Deborah was, but remember Moses, he was judge and he was being overwhelmed with all the work. And I think it was his father Jethro who said, you got to delegate some of this to other people. So these other people that he had appointed were this mishpat, or judge. So Deborah had the same role as these people. She sat under the palm, and this was kind of her court. And people would bring their issues, and she would make judgments based on God's guidance. All right, so let's go to verse 6. Judges 4. So Israel's being oppressed. So she, being Deborah, sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." Does anybody have Kishon Wadi or Wadi Kishon in their translation? So a wadi is, I don't think, if you look at like Arizona in the desert, you have these dried riverbeds that for the most part are dry until a big rain comes along and then all the water is funneled through there. So it sounds like what happens here is, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that in a moment. So anyway, God tells Deborah, Deborah tells Barak, gather your men, you're going to fight them. Barak says to her, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Now, is that a display of courage? Yeah, as long as she's behind me, I'm brave. And so Deborah replies, certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you're taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went with him. So when you read this, into the hand of the woman, who would you think? Maybe that woman. Deborah. That seems to be the obvious answer at this point. Now, turns out Deborah didn't engage in the battle, but her presence bolstered Barak's courage, and so he did what God had commanded him to do. All right, verse 11. Now, Heber, the Kenite, had left the other Kenites and the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zaanannim near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Double H to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. You know, Felix talks about he likes to visualize what's going on. So when you talk about 900 chariots fitted with iron, what do you conjure up in your mind? Is that like the baskets? People try to get sales? So a chariot fitted with iron, does that sound normal? Does that sound a little different? It must be special because it's mentioned. They could have just said it's chariots. So maybe these chariots had like armor plate on them, you know, to protect them. Maybe they had something in front so the air was coming in would just bounce off. What about Ben-Hur? You've seen that movie? Remember they had the chariots with the blades sticking out the side? Kind of gruesome, but I don't know, but maybe part of the tactic of the chariots was, you know, giddy up and you just run everybody over. You know, the horses can run fast.